Karen Rodman is next.
Thank you, Mayor and Executive Committee. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear. Thank you.
Great. I make this deputation on behalf of Just Peace Advocates, a Canadian-based independent human rights organization promoting just peace through the rule of law and respect for human rights. The work of Just Peace Advocates is based on the principle that the people of Palestine are entitled to the same rights as all people. I trust that you would agree with this, Mayor Tory, as well as the other members of the Executive Committee. Our organization is focused on the protection of civil and constitutional rights of those who speak out for freedom, justice, and equity. We appreciate the opportunity to provide a civil society voice focused on government, institutional, and societal accountability to the rule of law, to the standards of international human rights, and to humanitarian law. The November 2017 motion that came to this Executive Committee called for the review that's being considered today, and it was to include scholars and experts on constitutional law, on the Charter, and on human rights. We note that the right report back that there was no indication of any of these stakeholders or experts being consulted. What we do know is that the suggestions that were provided to the city staff were ignored and dismissed. Rather than a meaningful consultation, a generic survey was offered. The survey did not allow for informed fact gathering, with the city staff themselves most recently indicating that it did not yield useful information. The genuine lack of desire to look at the current alarming situation of racism and hate in the city, in the country, and around the world, in particular related to Islamophobia, is the concern. I'm being somewhat more kind than Sue Ann Levy was in her article in the Toronto Sun last night. It's been provided to the clerk, and I trust that you have that article before you, who was very critical of your staff, city manager, so I just point that out. I also draw the Executive Committee members' attention to the Islamic hate-mongered comments that was included in reference to Ms. Levy's article, and in particular, if I was to start to read any of those, I'm sure I would be dismissed from my delegation immediately here. In the original material that was provided in November 2017 to this committee in regard to the motion, there was indication of concern about white supremacists and neo-Nazi rallies and actions in our city. We would join in with that concern around white supremacy, fascism, and racial-oriented hate. Ironically, Al-Quds Day was referenced and in fact highlighted as the key event of concern. With today's motion, somehow the entire focus has now become Al-Quds Day. I say this is ironic because Islamophobic actions and behavior is on the rise. We've already mentioned the massacre by white supremacist terror last Friday with 50 Muslims, including children, being murdered in New Zealand, and an oncurring event in Gaza as well as across occupied Palestine. Today, the citizens of the city, as we mentioned this morning, will gather both outside and in the chamber in regard to solidarity for International Day on the Elimination of Racism. I hope that here in City Council and with the Executive that you will show that same solidarity by voting against this racist, Islamophobic, hate-oriented motion that's been put forward targeting the civil rights of the very people who are most impacted by the hate associated with Islamophobia in this city. Al-Quds Day, or Jerusalem Day, is an annual international Muslim-sponsored event that happens in the holy month of Ramadan just before Eid, and it is designated to both educate and to encourage people of conscience to work for just peace for the people of Palestine. Al-Quds Days here in Toronto are inclusive events that bring together people from various faiths and non-faiths, including Muslims, Christians, Jews, atheists, and others. I have provided, again, the Council or the Executive Committee with an article that's just come out, a statement from organizations, Christian organizations in America and Africa that represent 50 million Christians that provide the same comment around just peace for Palestinians. For the record, I need to mention that there has been no indication of the background provided to City Council Executive of the at least 15 hate rallies held by the right-wing Islamophobic national hate groups in this city over the last 2+ years, with most of these having happened on city property and the rest on our city streets. I have provided you a list of these anti-Islam hate rallies in the written report that I've submitted. The first one was just as the massacre was occurring in the Quebec City Mosque in January of 2017. The most embarrassing for the city was when the rally was to occur on the anniversary of that date here at Nathan Phillips Square, but somehow did get moved up to Melasma Square so that it didn't interfere with the vigil of the one-year anniversary. And the most recent
I'll have
was
to ask
on...
you to wrap up now. It's
I'm,
5:15.
okay, and I'm just, well, 2 sentences, and the most recent was on February 23rd. So I urge you and I appeal to you, if you believe in civil liberties, human rights, inclusiveness, and international law, that you'll reflect and you will reject this hate-sponsored motion.
All right, there may be a question, I don't know. No questions? Okay, thank you very much.